Opening to the light is a process. The journey on the road to Emmaus of Cleopas and his unidentified companion is not over when we get to what appears to be the end of the story at the end of Luke's Gospel. Of course, the end of the story is not the end of the story at all. It's just a new beginning. It's starting off in a new direction. And the reality is for Cleopas and for his traveling companion that there is still a long way for them to go. You remember the story. Jesus' life, his physical life here on earth, has come to an end, and then followers of his have gone to the tomb. They found the tomb empty, and they've come away bewildered and befuddled and saddened by the loss of this person they've loved, and by the loss of a place they could go to remember him and to sense again his presence. And as Cleopas and his friend have walked along the road to Emmaus, they have found that they were accompanied by a stranger. And as time unfolds and as they talk together and eventually as they break bread together, they discover that this stranger is not a stranger at all, but they experience again in their lives the presence of Jesus, and they experience the light that he brought and the hope that he has borne in their hearts. And it's at that moment that Luke tells us Jesus disappeared. And then the story concludes with these words at Luke chapter 24, beginning at verse 32, as Cleopas and his friend reflect on their experience. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" And then the story goes on. That same hour, they got up and returned to Jerusalem. And they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." Then they told what had happened on the road, and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. If we are going to have the experience of greater light, if we are going to grow in our ability to apprehend the light, we need to heed the experience that Cleopas and his friend had. We need to find that place within ourselves where we can find our hearts burning within us. What is it that causes our hearts to burn within us? I really believe there is a place in every one of us where we know the truth. There's a place within every human being on earth that if we can move beyond the clutter, move beyond the chaos and the confusion and the pain of life, if we can for a moment kind of move that to one side, not deny it or neglect it, but just not allow it to be the center of who we are. If for one moment we can put away the great overlay of story and narrative that we so often clutter our experience with, if for one moment we can put all of that aside and just come to the true essence of our experience as human beings, there's a place within every one of us where we will find our hearts burning within us. We will find light and hope and goodness and truth and beauty. And the key really is if we're able to follow that, follow whatever little bits of light have become evident to us, follow whatever little shards of wisdom and truth we know we have found. And if we can listen deeply enough, there is within every human being who is ever born, there is an authentic voice of truth, an authentic voice of wisdom. I often say to people, I have never told anyone or said anything to anyone that was true that they didn't already know. I'm just a kind of, hopefully, I'm just a kind of a voice that reminds, a voice that speaks a word that you already know deep in your heart. A voice that touches something in you that resonates. And it resonates because you already know it. You don't go to church or to the Bible or to any teacher looking for new truths. You don't need to find any new truths. Every truth that any of us has ever needed to know is contained within us as human beings, created in the image and likeness of God. But the journey goes on, and it's so fascinating to me how Luke describes what happens here. They said to each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us?" And then Luke goes on and says, that same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem. Now that makes me wonder why they left. Why did Cleopas and his companion leave Jerusalem in the first place? And it feels to me as though the answer to that question is pretty obvious. Jerusalem was in turmoil. Jerusalem was in an upheaval of chaos and confusion. And most important of all, Jerusalem, for anyone associated with Jesus at this time, could only have been a place of pain, a place of suffering, and a place of real danger. Jesus had just been executed by the Roman authorities. Jesus had just been condemned and killed by the most powerful worldly authority in the whole of Jerusalem. And so for anyone who had been in the past associated with Jesus, the temptation, the feeling of the compulsion could only be to flee. You've got to get away from this place. I mean, you could only think that having killed their leader, the authorities would then attempt to round up the leader's followers. It just makes sense. It's the way the world works. It's the way the powers that be operate. You don't just take the leader and then leave the leader's followers to go on to foment rebellion on their own, to raise up a new leader and to become the new vanguard of a revolutionary movement. You take out everybody. You take out everybody you can locate. You round them all up, and you eliminate the whole of this little group of chaotic revolutionaries that have upset your kingdom. So for Cleopas and his companion to go back to Jerusalem is to go back, to return to the place of vulnerability, to the place where they know that at some level they are at risk, to go back to the place of fear, to go back to the place where their lives have felt threatened, and to face those fears and to come face to face with all that has ever cast doubt and uncertainty into their minds. And that's the place where they go. And I really think that at this time, as we face fear, as we face uncertainty, the challenge is for us not to try to numb that out, to not try to find other activities that we can resort to escape from this uncertain condition in which we find ourselves, but to face head on, to walk into Jerusalem, to face head on those things that cause us to feel anxious, that cause us to feel frightened, and to know that when we go back to that place of fear, we will discover something. And so the story goes on. That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem, and they found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." So what they find when they go back to that place of fear is people who share their experience. People who share their experience of having found some light. People who share their experience of having heard and experienced in their hearts that same truth that they have experienced on the road to Emmaus. And that's why we gather. That's why we're trying to stay in touch with all of this Zooming and videos and writings and all this stuff. We're trying to stay connected with those people who share our experience, as limited as it might be, who share our experience of having discovered the light that is in Jesus, and who have apprehended a little bit of that truth and mystery and beauty that was born in the person of Jesus. And we do that not to say how fine we are or to affirm the greatness of our beliefs over anyone else's. We do that because in coming together, we experience that light more fully. That light grows within us. Jesus said, "Whenever 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I will be there with them." And that's true for, it's so fascinating to me and lovely and powerful in this story that so they returned to Jerusalem and they found there the 11 and their companions gathered together. Now the 11 are the 11 disciples who we come to know as apostles, who become the kind of founding leadership of the Christian community. And it says, they were saying, the 11 were saying, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." So that's what you'd expect, right? Simon is going to become the leader, the premier leader initially of the Christian community. So to say the Lord has appeared to Simon is sort of a no-brainer. It's kind of like saying God spoke to the Pope, I guess. God is supposed to speak to the Pope because the Pope's the Pope. But we know, because we have followed this story all along, that it's not just Simon who has had this experience. The 11 say, "The Lord has risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon." But then they, and the they here is Cleopas and his traveling companion, told what had happened on the road and how he, Jesus, had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. So the light that is Jesus has appeared to Simon, which is what we'd expect. But what we don't expect, and what I doubt the 11 expected at this point, is that that light had appeared also to Cleopas, whoever Cleopas is, whoever Cleopas becomes. I don't know that I've ever heard of a church to St. Cleopas, and certainly not to his anonymous, unknown, unremembered companion who is never named on the road. The Lord has appeared to Simon, which we'd expect, but the Lord has also appeared to Cleopas and his traveling companion. And that means that the light seeks to be born in your life, in my life, in the life of every human being on earth. There is no one so insignificant as to be excluded from the category of light bearer. There is no one too uneducated, too ordinary, too poor, too broken to be excluded from this experience of seeing the growing light of our lives. In the book of Revelation, at the end of the New Testament, Jesus is said to have said, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone opens that door, I will come in and eat with him." And so that's really the whole challenge. The whole challenge is to open the door a little bit. Because when we open the door, we find that the light grows brighter. When we open the door of our hearts, we find that there is a truth there that grows and deepens and becomes more real. When we open the door, we know that we walk this journey with a companion, that we are accompanied along the way by a presence of love and of light and of truth. And that's really the whole challenge. It's the challenge of this strange, dark time that we are currently in, to open our hearts more deeply and to find the growing light of Christ dwelling at the heart of our being. Jesus, we thank you for the light of your presence. We thank you for the light of your truth. We thank you that we can trust the growing light in our lives. We pray that you would help us to know what it means to be people whose hearts open more deeply and who grow in our awareness of the truth and light of your presence. Help us to see more clearly. Help us to know that the dawn is growing bright. Help us to hear the beauty of birdsong and to trust in the light of your gracious presence, that we may know that all that we need to make this journey is present in the depths of our being, and that we can trust in your loving presence at work in all of life.